CSS selectors explained for beginners. So this video is going to cover what selectors are and how they work. I will cover more specific selectors and some of the most common selectors in a little bit more depth in future videos. I'll also cover specificity and some stuff that relates as well, but this video is going to focus on selectors, what they are and how they work. So what is a CSS selector? Well, a selector will define a pattern that will select HTML elements and it will apply styles to those elements that you select. For example, in my HTML here, I have some different elements. Like I have this H1 element, I have this P element, I have this ordered list and all these list items. And if I want to apply styles to these different elements here, I can use CSS to write a selector, which is basically going to be a rule that is going to select some of these different elements and it's going to apply some styles to these elements. So if I head back to my CSS style sheet here, this right here is me selecting all H1 elements on my web page. So this is going to say, hey, for whatever style I want to apply here, I want you to select all H1 elements, and then you can open up a pair of curly braces and apply different properties and values representing some styles that you want to apply to this element here. So right now, this H1, it would be considered my selector, and it would select this H1 tag right here, and it would apply the color of red to that H1 tag. So this is a tag selector here. And if I go to my web browser here, you can see that my title here, my H1, it is now red. But if I remove my selector and I comment this out here, you're going to see that it goes back to black. All right. So this is saying, hey, select all the H1s in my document and apply the color of red to them. So this selector here defines a pattern that will select different elements, in this case, an H1 element, and it applies these styles to it. Now, there are a ton of different selectors that you can use within CSS. And this is important because it allows you to select exactly what you want to style in your document and prevent you from styling things that you really don't want to style. All right, so let's run through some different types of selectors that you can use. So right here, this is going to be a class selector. So this is going to select an HTML class. And the way that this works is to define a class selector, you use a period in front of the label of the class or the name of the class. So this dot label right here is saying, I want you to select all HTML elements that have a class name of first item. And if I go to my HTML here, you can see I have one element that has a class of first item. And that is my first list item element here. So if I go back to my selector here, I'm applying a font size of 20 pixels. So if I look at my browser output here, you're going to see that my first item here, it is larger than all of my other items because I'm just applying this font to my list items that have a first item class. And you select classes within CSS using a period and then the label of the class that you want to select. Now you can also do a very similar thing with IDs. And the way that you select an element with a certain ID within CSS is using this hashtag or pound symbol. So this is saying, select all of the elements within my web page that have a hashtag or pound symbol of description, and then apply the text decoration of line through to those elements. So if I go to my index.html here, you're going to see that I have one element that has the ID of description, and it is my p tag with the text. This is a description. So if I go back to my CSS here, I'm applying the style of line through text decoration here. So if I come back to my page, you can see that I have my description here that has the text decoration of a line right through it. So it just selects this single element with this ID. Now, you can also group selectors together. And the way that you can do that is just using your selectors, but separating them by commas. So here, this right here is saying that, okay, I want to select all H1 elements and I want to select all P elements. So the comma here is kind of, you can think about a comma as saying and. So select all H1s and all P tags. And this could also be like, it could be some class here. So it could be select dot first item and hashtag description, some ID. And you can keep putting these commas to select a bunch of different elements if you'd like. So it could be all H1s, all H2s, all H3s, and just separate those by commas. It would select all those. So the comma groups selectors together, and you can think of a comma in CSS as saying and. So if I go back to my web browser here and I look at my H1 and my P tag elements, I would expect both of them to have the font style of italic. And as you can see, my H1 here is italic. Same thing with my description. Now, you can also use what are called combinators. So this allows you to kind of drill down on your specificity a little bit more and get more specific on what you are selecting within your CSS. And there are several different combinators that you can use. I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm just going to show you a couple here to give you an idea of how these work. So right here, what I'm saying, so I have OL space LI. There's no comma here. And what this is saying is, I want you to select all LIs that are within an OL tag. So within my ordered list, select all of the LIs. And you can see how this might be useful if, okay, say you have on your webpage, you have an ordered list and you have an unordered list, but you just want to apply some specific styles to your ordered list. Well, you can use a selector like this or a combinator like this, and you can say, okay, well, I want to select all of my list items within an ordered list. And this could go even further. You could say, okay, within my ordered list here, I want to select my list items, but I only want to select a list item that has the class name of first item. And that's what this would do here. Additionally, say you had something else within your list item. Say you had a span within your list item. Well, this would say, within my ordered list, select all of my list items and select all of the spans within list items, but only list items that are within an ordered list. All right. So you can use a combinator like this to kind of drill down your DOM tree and only select specific elements that are within other elements. So if I go and look at my HTML here quick, I want to look for all of my list items that are within a ordered list. And as you can see, I have an ordered list right here. So this would select all of these list items here. But I also have a list item outside of my ordered list. But since it's not within my ordered list here, I wouldn't expect this style to be applied to it here. And if I look at my web browser, you can see that all of these list items here, they are blue, but this list item that is outside of my ordered list, it is unstyled because that selector, it didn't select this list item. Now you can also use some different combinators as well. And this right arrow here is basically the immediate descendant selector. So what it's going to say is, hey, I want to select all of my list items that are a immediate child of a main tag. And if I go to my index.html here, well, my main tag's here, and what are all the immediate children to this main tag? Well, you know the answer to this question by asking, okay, is an element's first parent a main tag? Well, this H1 element, the parent tag to this H1 element is this main tag. Same thing for this P tag. The parent element is this main tag. Same thing for this ordered list. The parent element is this main tag. But if we get to these list items here, the parent element is this ordered list. This main tag is not the immediate parent of these list items. So this selector here, it's not going to apply to my list items that are within my ordered list because those are not immediate descendants of this main tag. But this list item right here, well, its parent is this main tag here. So this should apply to this list item right here, and it should turn the color to orange. And if I go back here, you see that it does indeed turn the color to orange here. All right, so that is the immediate descendant selector. And there are several other combinators that I will cover in future videos, but those are kind of the basics of how they work. They allow you to select different parts of the DOM and allow you to kind of drill down into the DOM a little bit more. All right. Now, you can also select pseudo classes, and what a pseudo class is going to select is a certain state of an element. So what do I mean by a certain state of an element? Well, this could be if you are hovering over an element, that state of that element is it's being hovered. And you might want to apply a style to that element while it's being hovered. And the syntax for this here is you use a colon, and then you specify what state that you want to apply those styles to. So let's say that on my button, I want to apply some styles for a specific state. Well, I would use button, colon, and then you can see the different states that I can select here are if my button is active, if it is checked, if it is disabled, and you can see there's a ton of other ones here as well. If my button's being focused on, and there's a whole bunch of different states that you can select to apply different styles to it. But in this case, I'm going to choose the hover state. So when my button's being hovered, I'm changing the background color to orange red here. So if I go back to my HTML here, I have my button here, and when I hover over it, you can see that it changes the background color to orange red because the state of this element is it's being hovered. So you can use the colon following a certain selector to select a certain state of an element. And this doesn't just need to be used on the single element selector. This could be used on the description selector here to where I could do hover on that as well. So now this would say for an element that has an ID of description, when I hover over that, change its text decoration to line through. So if I go back here, you can see that my paragraph tag, it's no longer text decoration line through by default, but when I hover over it, it now applies that style because it's a change in state there. And I'm just styling the state of this element with my pseudo class. And like I said, there's much more that you can do than just the state of hover. And you can see all those kind of right here. All right. Now you can also use what is called a pseudo element. And pseudo elements are used when you want to select something, but that information that you want to select, it's not necessarily evident in just the DOM tree. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's say that I want to select just the first letter of a certain element. Well, within your DOM tree, you don't really have a element that represents the first letter of an element. You can select that entire element, but what if you just want to select a certain part of that element? Well, this is where you could use a pseudo element selector. And here, instead of just a single colon, you use a double colon. And this is going to select, okay, within my p tag, just select the first letter and make its font size a little bit larger. So if I go back to my browser here, you can see that within my description here, only the first letter here is selected with a larger text. So the pseudo element here, it allows me to select certain parts of elements that aren't just like their standalone elements within the DOM tree. And if I go back to my CSS here and I use some autocomplete to see a couple other pseudo selectors that you can use, you can see that you could do first line, you could use, okay, if there's a grammar error, or you could add different placeholders or certain shadow. And you can see there's like a ton of different pseudo selectors that you can use here. You can also add your own content using before and after. So maybe before a certain element, you want to add some content. You can actually do that using just CSS here. But I'll have future videos going more in depth of these selectors. This is just to kind of give you an idea of some of the various most common selectors that you might see within CSS. All right. So a selector in CSS It will select certain elements within your DOM, and it allows you to apply styles just to those elements that you select. And CSS gives you a ton of different selectors that you can use, whether it is just selecting a certain tag or a certain class, certain IDs, grouping selectors, using various combinators, and then even using pseudo classes to select a certain state of an element, or a pseudo element, allowing you to select like different parts of an element, or adding new content to the DOM tree that's not evident in it right away. So that is selectors within CSS. I'll have future videos going a little bit more in depth. YouTube thinks that you'll like this video suggested on the screen right here. So if that's the case, I'll see you over there. But if not, I will see you in that next one.